Welcome back to the Nothing to Something podcast. This is the podcast that's been put together as a platform to share real stories from real people, showcasing real success and the struggles that are involved along the way. Guys, before we move forward today, please click subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. This will provide you with all the future content, top drawer content that's been put out there to help you guys succeed. It's also going to keep me pushing to produce it. Now, this episode, we welcome an absolute pioneer of the fitness industry with over 2 decades experience, including many highs and lows, including time as a volunteer, as a student, a personal trainer, a strength and conditioning coach, a holistic support mechanism to many athletes, and a director most lately. Guys, please welcome to the podcast, Wayne Richardson of Richardson Sport. Wayne, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Much appreciated. Thanks for having me on. Thank you. Much appreciated.
No, really appreciate you coming on. I'm really looking forward to this. You are a man who has achieved the impossible to people like me. And I will put a bit of context behind that. I'm someone who's worked in the leisure industry now as a personal trainer, amongst other things, and been around the gym scene for best part of a decade. Yeah. And when everybody starts out in becoming a PT, they have this vision that they're going to be training athletes, that they're going to be working with the stars, that they're going to be working with footballers and athletes and all these glamorous things. Yeah. And very, very few people fulfill that dream. Yeah. You are one of those people. So I'm very intrigued to see how we've got to this stage, along with a lot of other things.
Yeah. No.
First and foremost, mate, do you want to just do a bit of an intro for the listeners? Let us know who you are and what it is that you do.
Yeah. So Wayne Richardson of Richardson Sport. Been working in the industry for best part probably about 20, 25, 20, 30 years now.
Serious time, that.
You know, funny enough, my partner kind of reminded me of all the things that I've done, and sometimes I don't even think about it. I just go, yeah, it's been a long time, and you're trying to evolve and do different things and that. So, and started off like you just mentioned previously, Mark, about being a PT, being involved in the industry, and funny enough, how it kind of happened. I spent most of my time just watching and looking at different people and finding out where I wanted to be and stuff, and which we'll talk about later on in terms of from school and college and so on and so forth. But the main bit of Richardson Sport the ethos was to help athletes and footballers who've been been released from clubs and stuff as well, but looking at like kind of very much like a bit of an holistic approach. So, started off at Man City for the best part of 18 years. Worked at Man City for 18 years, but working in the community and from the community to the academy and then from the academy to the first team. Started working with, after that, what happens in football market. People come in, new managers come in, new ethoses come in and stuff as well. I got kind of like I got very, very lucky there because it was very much like the community aspect and then working with the community aspect into the academy and then from the academy into the first team. So I was quite fortunate to have all the different kind of like environments. It's something that doesn't happen now, nowadays. You don't get that point of like having that kind of internship and working, with all three. Everyone, as you just mentioned, everyone wants to kind of get straight into working with the elite athletes. Everyone wants it here and now. No one wants to kind of go into kind of doing volunteering and the ethos of working volunteering and stuff. Started off at City and then started working for a consultancy. And this was looking after probably any play, like from Premier League right down to Championship, down to non-league football clubs. So I used to travel around with a company called New Life Fitness, and it was a bank of consultants that used to go around doing all sports science and strength conditioning. And this kind of gave me a bit of a brief view into kind of working with like top end athletes and top end people. And unfortunately, what happened was with this case as well, they used to recruit quite a lot of university students and college students, people that wanted to kind of get into that game. And before the emergence of obviously the Premier League, everyone was trying to get into it. Everyone was trying to get into like just being PT and being like involved in that fitness game. And unfortunately, what happened was the emergence of the Premier League then came, And then it was compulsory that you then had to have a sports science degree. And, you know, you had to then get your masters and stuff as well, because there was a lot of kind of, you're dealing with a lot of players that are very much up there. You're dealing with, it's more money involved now. There's more responsibility. So with all this experience that I had to then go back to university, which we'll talk about later on. And, you know, in between that, find a part-time job, run a family, all the things that come with it as well, you know, the demands and all the demeanour and everything that happened. And, you know, I'm to this point, which we'll talk about as well with Richardson Sport, and, you know, how the ethos of working with the players, and not only looking at from grassroots to academy, from academy to first team, but how players, when they get released, the issues and the mental health problems and all the other things that come with it as well, and the parents as well, what happens next. And, you know, it's been hard. I won't sit down, Mark, and tell you that it's not been hard. It's been probably one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do in my entire life, you know. And it's a test. It's a massive test. It's, you know, sometimes people don't see how difficult the road is. You know, I'll probably spend most of my time, you know, like, because I'm traveling from Leeds, so I live in Leeds. You know, I've been there for 13 years, so it's like up and down the motorway, wind, rain or shine. You know, you out. And it's like, sometimes you're there, you're tired, you're ill. Do I have to get up? Oh, right, okay, then you have to do the school run. Yeah, you have to do everything. So, you know, that's kind of in a bit of a nutshell. And I'm here now as a director of something that I've basically started. And sometimes sometimes, Mark, I just can't believe now, to a point of 13 years, where I actually am now and what's going to be happening and what I'm looking forward to. So it's been a ride, but, you know, we're here, and, you know, much to talk about.
Amazing. Credit to you. These already a load of questions popping off in my head that we'll get to in a second. Just before this whole journey that you've just alluded to there, Wayne, was it always a sports thing? Did you come out for school and college and education, full-time education, wanting to go down that path?
Yeah.
Did you know that was going to be your thing? And also, did you always know that you wanted to be self-employed? Because you've always kind of been that route as being your own boss, haven't you? You've never really been a corporation man. Was that part of the plan, or was that just the way it worked out?
I think what happened was, when I used to spend my time at Platt Lane. So, you know, Platt Lane, City.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this is before, obviously, the money came into City. And what I used to do is, Mark, and my kind of education and stuff as well, you know, I used to find myself like walking past, you know, after when I finished school, and walking past and watching the first team training, the academy training and stuff as well. And I remember watching this and spending that time all the time, and then going in and talking to some of the coaches there. Some of the coaches, probably 2 or 3 of the coaches, are still there now. And I used to spend my time just watching them and seeing what makes a coach, and kind of doing a bit of volunteering and just seeing, like, this is where I wanted to be and this is what I wanted to do. It's something that, from since school, being involved in sport in school, this is my journey, you know, and this is my direction, and this is where I wanted to be and stuff as well. Obviously, it's going to take many turns in terms of like what we're doing, but I always knew out that, you know, this is where I wanted to be. Not everyone wants to be playing sport. You all want to play sport, but at the same time, I knew from probably an early age that I wanted to be involved in coaching or some form of kind of setup, which is like involved in elite sport. How I was going to get there is a different thing. So what I do is I used to spend time going to different places, having a look, watching games, spending time with like the medical departments in some places as well, just watching. Obviously, I couldn't get involved in all of that as well because of insurance and everything, but I just spent a lot of time just watching different people, volunteering, going into community groups, getting involved with different, and looking at other sports, because obviously the business is predominantly football related. So that gave me a bit of a fresh perspective. Then in between, what happened was at 16, I'd make the decision where, you know, what you're going to do next. And because of obviously the situation with my family and everything, because I have a very, very big family, it was a case of like, you know, where I lived, it was very much like high in unemployment. It was like, you know, the demands, you know what I mean? If you weren't bringing money in, you were kicked out of your home. And it was a case of, I remember saying to my mum at the time, you know, my family, on a Saturday, you know, I'm going to be involved in football. And all my siblings and everything laughed. And what they used to do, Matt, they used to play we used to have the match of the day, obviously on a Saturday, and they used to turn the TV up and dance around the TV, and used to laugh at me and saying, there's a guy here, you know what I mean? No one's ever kind of got involved in football. This is, you know what I mean? Why don't you find a job, you know, like cleaning or working at
Yeah.
your dad's a mechanic, you know what I mean? Go and follow your dad with a trade, you know, and I was like, it's not really where I want to be. So the education bit, you know, I had to then go college. I went to school, done the GCSEs, then went to college, went to Salford. It was just a Salford college, you know, there was 2 campuses at the time. And then there was this new thing that they brought out. It was very much like sports science. It was kind of like fresh, vibrant sports science. What does it mean? You know what I mean? You're learning about different things. You're learning about strength conditioning. There's so many different strands to it. Studied at college for the best part of 2 to 3 years. And then still was working, still doing my jobs, still working at Platt Lane. Then having to juggle, then working in a bakery. You know, nothing was going to happen. Nothing was going to come to me. You know what I mean? No one was going to give it to me. I had to juggle around at 16, 17. Then it made the decision there where I was clashing with my family members in the home. I got kicked out when I was 17. I'm having to find somewhere to live now. You know, built my dream, you know, like of like my pathway. This is where I wanted to be and this is what I was doing. And, you know, that bit was then difficult because you then still, I can give up my education. Don't have to do my education. I can, you know, just carry on working, you know, and then work at Platt Lane. I can still do these jobs because I'm earning money now. I've got the taste of money. But my journey very much like until I had to then go back to university, it was good up to probably like 19, 20. And then when I had to go back, I spent probably about 5 or 6 years involved at City and working at clubs and stuff. And then until then, I had to go back to university, which was really hard, you know, because then you're then having to then do everything. Then you're having to go to Harvard referencing. You're having to kind of go through all this.
Yeah.
At the same time, you've got a family. You've got you know what I mean. You've got you still got to earn money. You've still got to juggle. You still got to put everything into perspective and think to yourself, how the hell am I going to get through all of this? And the bottom line of it is, after when we then had when we did the university stuff, and because I had all this experience, it wasn't necessarily meaning that I was going to get a job at the end of it. Because then the jobs were then earmarked for very much like the friends and people involved in there as well. And I found it very, very difficult because then there's times where I went after getting my own qualifications and then going degree, masters, you know, and I think to myself, I'm quite armed now. I think I've got all the experience, 15, 20 years experience. I've got the degree, I've got the masters, I've got everything. And all of a sudden it's like, you're too overqualified. Or, you know, this job here, we can't pay you this amount of money, or we can't do this. And everything came where I was getting so many doors shut in my face after fulfilling all these requirements in terms of education. So it was difficult.
Difficult to say the least. Wow. Do you know what? I'm smirking, Wayne, because there's so many things that I align with there. I still coach to this day. I do a bit of development coaching as part-time to my full-time employment. And something you just said there aligns massively. Even if you don't know exactly where you're going, as long as you know the direction you want to move in and you take care of your duties on a day-to-day basis, I tell clients all the time, then you can be confident that you're moving in the right direction and things will take care of themselves in the long run. I'm putting that into place back in the day when you said there was no really pay there, but you were dropping into Platt Lane, you were getting involved where you could, you were doing what you could. Was there any part of that where you thought, you know what, I've been doing this for a minute, the family's taking the mickey and what have you, I can't really see where it's taking me. Surely you wavered at some point. Was there any thought of dropping it out or going a different route, or was it always unwavering?
Yeah, I think the problem that you had is in the area stuff as well, because you know we always talk about our upbringing and kind of like the family values and stuff as well, and the people that we have around us and the support things. And Mike, if I'm being honest, I hated home. It was a bad analogy. I didn't really want to be around there. I mean, I think at the time, my parents, my mum and dad had split up since like 1978, 79. My dad then had another family, you know, which basically we seen him and we didn't see him, you know, he kind of was there present. And then my mum then got involved with a drug dealer, and she was with that guy for like 25, 30 years. So I'm like one of 8. And I seen that guy on the many occasions beat my mum up like she was nothing. And then still having to then do stuff. So you're still kind of surrounded with the negativity of this guy drug dealing and putting everything on the table and doing what his bits and dealing from your house and everything like that. What's supposed to be a happy home. And all these troubles that were going on and stuff as well. And I won't be afraid to say it, Mark. And these things had happened. And I got into a situation where I think to myself, this is not really where I want to be. it's not really where I wanted to be. You've got to have a really, really strong mindset. Probably at that age as well, what you say to a lot of people, you've got to have a mindset, because you know what, you're on a journey. You've got to think about where this is going to take you. It's not you. You know what I mean? There's always things that are going to derail you. So when we were at school, the where my school was at the time, the drug dealers were cheeky enough to then come in and try and recruit young people to sell drugs and stuff as well. It was like the careers office. It was very much like the careers office.
Wow.
And at the end of it, it was very much like they used to wait outside. So when I'm doing some of my lectures at some of the universities, I always put a picture of Darth Vader, and I said, look, listen, guys, what you got to remember is sometimes these guys are like very much like the dark side. You know, there's a lot of things going on, and a lot of people get recruited on, you don't, you know, you haven't got much going on in your life. We're now your new family. We're now these things. You know what I mean? These are things that are going on and stuff as well. And what really saved,
Sad.
and what really saved me, Mark, was having my rucksack and having a ball in my hand. And I used to come out, and the guy said, I've heard that you're a bit of a fast runner. We want you to deliver a parcel for us and stuff. And I said, listen, I've got to go training. Now, what do you mean you've got to go training? Don't you want to earn 500 quid? You know, and I was like, nah, you know, I've got a part-time job and I've got to go training now. What? Give us a kick of the ball. So I used to give him a kick of the ball, and then he used to then walk off and everything. And it became a routine thing where you used to see this all the time, and you're sitting down thinking yourself, I could just about just give up that. I could do a lot with that. You know, I could wear nice things. I didn't have the best of nice things at all. I used to get the mickey taken out of me at school. I used to get bullied. I used to get beaten up, Mark. You know what I mean? It was that kind of thing where you used to go, my mum used to buy my trainers out of a basket, you know what I mean? And it was like, because that's all we could afford at the time. You know, very rare. You know, I didn't have any kind of life skills, Mark, at like 14, 15. I couldn't tell the time. I used to wet my bed. I used to, you know what I mean? It was like I was scared. Do you know what I mean? And I used to just get bullied. I think to myself, wow, you know, and it was people that were around me at that time who weren't my immediate family, who supported me, you know, in kind of like giving me life skills and telling me what's what, and this is the way that you've got to conduct yourself. And it was a coach, you know, that said to me, Wayne, you know, you've got so much to give, and with your enthusiasm and your kind of like mindset, you'll go far. And this guy is now dead. You know, he's a coach he's gone to Africa, went to Africa and set up a foundation there. And he was telling me about all these things. So that journey in between, Mark, you know, having that kind of, you know, you're supposed to have your family around you, and, you know, like what we do with our kids, you want to go to college, you want to go to university, you want to do all the right things for them and make sure they go right down the right path and they're respectful and stuff as well. I didn't really have that at all. And anything that I did learn, I learned from other people around me, you know what I mean, that weren't my immediate family, which was really, really difficult.
Wow, it sounds it. First and foremost, mate, thank you for the honesty there. Thank you for the honesty. I think we've all got our own struggles, especially growing up, and a lot of us coming from the ends that we came up from. And it's humbling to hear other people's stories. It really is. When you think you've been through a few things yourself, I can only imagine what it could be like when you've not got the backing in your own household, you know what I mean? And you've not got that solidity there to fall back onto if you are struggling with anything. Because for everything I've been through, that's certainly something I've had. Parents have been amazing. They've always been there for me. And the way you said you had ball and you had sports and stuff back then,
Yeah.
I probably had my mum and dad back then. Didn't realise it at the time. And they were the ones that pulled me away from the negativity and probably looking at doing heavy sentences and going jail and getting involved in things that I really shouldn't have been doing. So it's amazing that you came through it and you've achieved what you've achieved to this day, mate. It's massive, massive. That's absolutely massive.
I always remember, Mark, one of the situations I remember coming back from training once, and I remember a guy. I came back and my mum's face was swollen at the time, you know what I mean, and found out what's going on. And I remember going where I used to live, kind of back onto Gooch Close. And I remember walking down there, and a guy who I went to on a war ceremony recently, and the guy was there, this particular guy, this gangster was there, ex-gang member was there. And I remember, walking down, I thought, put me back down, and I went down there, and they were all on the street and stuff. And I went up to him, Mark, and I said to him, is it all right if I can have a chat with you about something? He said, yeah, no problem. I said, I'm after a gun. He said, you're after what? He said, I'm after a gun. And he went, what do you mean you're after a gun? He says, what for? I said, this guy, his boyfriend's beating her up and all this kind of stuff and one thing after another. So what he did, Mark, he took the gun out and he gave it to me in my hand. He said, yeah, go and feel it. Touch it. Do you know how to use it? And he just looked at me and pointed the gun to me and he said to me, listen, you've got more talent than any of us around here as well. right? You've got so much to give in your life. If I ever see you around here again, I'm personally shooting myself. And he went like that, bam, 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 with a gun. And I ran home, Mark. And I ran in my bedroom and I must have stayed there for like flipping all night, thinking in my head, what could have happened. And that was then me. When I then seen it, I thought the turning point was, I've got to do something about it. What I was going to do about it, I don't know. I don't know how I was going to do something about it. And it came to a head at some point. And then certain things didn't happen and it didn't change and all that as well. And it was like, and I just think to myself, wow, at 16, 17, I've got to go through all of this, and obviously there's other family members there, It wasn't just exclusive to me. There was other family members there, but it's like, my mum did what she could with, the circumstances that she had. But how are you then going to kind of progress in life and go through your education and have aims and objectives and be the best person you can be? Because this could either work one of two ways. It could either go really, really bad, or it could go, in my favour. And luckily, because of the people that I had around me, it worked in my favour, and I had a really, really good support mechanism. So, thanks to them, I'm here now.
No, massive thanks, mate. I think there's a hell of a lot. It's tough. It's tough. As I say, we've all been through it, but there's some stories in there, and I know there's a hell of a lot more than what you've shared. Thank you so much for sharing. Are you big on gratitude, Wayne? When you look back at them things, what do you think? Because I know I've got a few things myself to where I look back and a few scenarios, not too dissimilar to what you just explained, could have gone one or two ways. Yeah. And I can only thank God. I'm not saying I'm a overly religious person, and I go to church every Sunday, but there's certain things I look at and I've got to give gratitude for where I've ended up and the things that I've come through. Yeah, when you look back at your past, how does it make you feel?
Sometimes, Matt, I get this imposter syndrome, and I'm very much like, what could have happened, and the people that have been around me, and I always get to a point where there's a lot of things that kind of I went through, and so I split from my wife, things were, I then had to fight for my daughter and all that kind of stuff, and go through it all. You kind of go through all these things, and you think to yourself, when's it ever going to end? When am I going to get my break? When am I going to, and I sat down with my friend who is very much like, he's a Christian, and I sat down and I spoke to him, and I said to him, listen, I'm going through a few things and everything like that, and I'm in a chat with him about it. And he said to me, look, Wayne, you have to, it's difficult at the time, but there's always somebody out there fighting your corner. You know what I mean? You can't visually see it. You can't, person won't come up, but they'll come up in ways where they reveal themselves, where it's like so many people will come to you. And it's up to you to take that opportunity when these people hold out their hand and say, listen, Mark, Wayne, I've got a problem, or I want to help on something like that. And you think to yourself, where have you come from? You know what I mean? I'm going through all this rubbish, and where have you actually come from? Or, you know what I mean? I've not picked up the phone or said anything. I've just gone, right, well, what happens? And, I've had so much, to get to this point now, Mark, in my life, I've been so fortunate. I really have. You know what I mean? I've had a lot of good people around me. Family and friends, my partner, and it's kind of like a teaching. So I've, every day I'm learning something. You know what I mean? I always get to that point where I have to sit down and think, what, I so much appreciate just see some people just coming back to me with words and kind words and stuff as well. So yeah, definitely for me, it makes all the difference.
Yeah, it's clear to see you've taken the positives from it. It's obviously made you the person you are, and you've taken a lot of positives from it. That's another thing that I'm very big on, that strengths comes from struggles. There's two ways to look at it. You'll know what it's like growing up around certain peer groups. I've still got certain peer groups or certain friends from the past where they still believe to this day that they were a victim, and everything's gone negatively because of where they lived and what they were around. And the other way to look at that is the strength from the struggles, mate. If we hadn't been through the things we've been through, we wouldn't be as strong-minded, as strong-willed, and we wouldn't be as driven and successful as we are in the current day. So once again, thank you for sharing. It's humbling, mate. It really is. It's really humbling. Just moving on a little bit from there then. You've obviously been to the trenches and back. Credit to you for staying positive and pushing through. We've got through all this struggle then of sort of moving into the industry, and moving into training, moving into football. Just before we move into the business itself and Richardson Sport, just on where you talked about the Premier League stepping in and your requirements then to have the degrees and the certain qualifications to be able to still partake in all the things that you wanted to do. How much of a setback was that? Because I know in my current state, it wasn't until I got probably into a leadership position, into a management position, maybe multi-site, and had teams of people working with me or working under me, to where I realized that I could do more if I knew more.
Yeah.
And going back and doing those qualifications, as you just said then, and working with Harvard, referencing and submitting dissertations. And mate, when you've got kids and you've got to do them after 8 p.m. at night and you go into bed in the early hours and you've got to get up for work in the morning, it's a lot.
Definitely.
Where were you with that? Because once again, did you falter? Did it make you think, wow, is this for me? Or was it just, this is what I've got to do, let's get it done?
I think it was more. I think what happened was I had approached. I started first after when I found out from a few people in the medical who were based at the clubs in the medical side that they were changing everything. So they were really, really good to kind of like go through stuff with me and say to me, look, Wayne, there's there's different requirements from what they expect for insurance reasons and everything else that goes with it. So I spent a bit of time with them. I was fortunate to spend time with these guys and go through it all.
These angels in disguise again, these people, yeah.
Or just at the club, Matt, you know what I mean? And this is before anyone, like the kind of emergence of the internship. So it's like when you then came in and said, look, I just want to watch and you want to go through it, they were like, yeah, welcome, the door was always open. But then when you had a situation there where you had to go and kind of put everything into perspective, it was like the late hours, you've got to have say for instance, set a piece of coursework in by a certain time, and you then come back from work, you've got your clients, because you're then getting into the early stages very much of like going from like PT to elite, because then I was working with some low level kind of like academy players. Then me and my partner at the time, my wife had split, so then it was like I had to do 2-3 days where I had to pick my daughter up from school, and then do all of that. She would stay over. Then I had to take her to school from there as well. Then I would have to go back to work doing my part-time work as well. So I then went to do my degree, part-time work, looking after my daughter, making sure that I then spend enough time. It's all about that time management, getting everything right, managing your time effectively as well, knowing that at the end of it, something good will come of it. When it happens, whether it happens now or happens at the end, do you know what I mean? At some point, sacrifices and all the things will pay off at some point as well. And I used to always keep that in my head, man, that I'm doing this for a reason. I'm doing this for me, but I'm then doing it for my kids. I'm doing it for everything else that comes with it as well. And it was probably one of the hardest testing times that I had to go through, and then still having to go to court and try and gain access. And then you're then coming out of there, and then you're still thinking, well, I've still got my coursework to do. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, you know what? I can't be bothered with this no more. And when it was all done, someone turned around to me and said to me, was it as easy as it looked? and I was like, and I burst into tears, Matt, because it was like one of those things where I think to myself, you know what, I wish you would have known the struggles and everything else that went with it as well, trying to get to that point, and just to try and keep that focus and that keeping yourself sane, to think that, you know what, at the end of it, I've got something there to look forward to, and if I do what's right and do what's required, then I think some good will come out of it. The back of that was then applying for jobs. You then knowing that you've got all the qualifications, then you're applying for jobs. And that's when I found it difficult, because I thought the Premier League, the Football League, whatever the industry that you're going into in that elite status requires you to have a minimum of a BSc or an MSc, you know what I mean, equivalent, in terms of you doing all the little bits like the kind of the accreditations and everything else like that. So how it works, Mike, it was like they tell you to get your degree, they tell you to get your volunteering, do some volunteering as well, because we want to try and see how you interact with people and what you then do. Then you do your volunteering. Then they say, oh, by the way, to kind of back up your BSc, what you need to do is do your accreditations. Your accreditations might be anything between £15,000-20,000, the amount of courses that you go on to and getting yourself accredited. Then they tell you to do your masters. You do your masters, then they say to you, you're too overqualified. And, and then it's like every door that you go into, it's like, well, where have you been before? What have you done? And there's my references, there's what I've done. Well, you know what, at the moment, we've only got one day. And I remember, just quickly, there was a guy, and I was working at a League One club at the time, and I was working there as an intern. And I used to work, and what I used to do is I used to work with there used to be groups of academy players I used to, and one of the parents was a solicitor. He owned his own solicitor in kind of like his chambers and stuff. And he said to me, look, I know you're only here as an intern, you're working here 2 days. What I'm going to do is, this is what he said, you've done wonders for my son. And this is how it then completely changed you've done wonders for my son. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pay for you to carry on with your studying, right? And I'm going to pay for your wage as well, providing that you stick with my son. But the mistake he made was giving that money directly to the club. So when he gave the money directly to the club, I knew how much it was. And the club turned around and said to me, we've got a bit of money for you. And Mark, it wasn't what it was and what they had used that money for. Because they were in so much problems, they used it to pay for other things. So I had to be in the conversation. Wow. I had to then sit down and talk to this parent and say, listen, this is what they've done. And it was things like this that were happening. Every time you went into a club, going for an interview, it was another thing, it was another issue, or one thing after another. And we're seeing it at the moment with the situation of like black and ethnic coaches and people who are getting into that elite sport and stuff as well, and how many knockbacks we've had and everything. Saying to people, keep your mindset, keep your focus, because at some point something will happen. You will catch a break, whether it's now or whatever it is. And it's taken me, since emergence with Richardson Sport, probably about 13 years to get to this point alone. And and what I've had to do and go through that. So, that the education thing, it never changes, it never stops.
It sounds like you've been through it for sure there. Do you know what? I'm glad you're sharing that as well, Wayne, because success isn't a linear process. We know that. Do you know what I mean? It's a game of attrition. It takes time to break it down. I think it's important for people to understand, especially people who are in the earliest stages of their journey, that it's going to be a struggle. There's going to be times when it looks like you're going nowhere with it. But the faith that you've had there, I'm a driven person myself. I can't even say I would have kept the faith as much as yourself there. I'll be honest with you. But Wayne, just looking back now, would you agree that all the things you've been through, and you've talked about personal life, professional life, you split, obviously dealing with stuff with your daughter in custody and all that sort of thing, and then the setbacks you've had with your business and trying to get ahead, even though you put in these hours in around the clock.
Yeah.
At the time, I know what it's like, mate. I've been through my own struggles. It wears on you. Would you agree that you're a better person now off the back of it? For anyone listening to this, going through the trenches, we're safe to say you're going to be stronger, you're going to be more driven, you're going to be more resilient coming out the back of these struggles.
Of course, yeah, but back then, Matt, there's not as much resources now. I mean, back then, and if you're struggling in terms of the mental health and everything else, there's so many people that you can tap into and support.
Right, yeah.
And back then, as like there's people that you might have on the podcast soon that they've been coaches and they've been at the top of the game and stuff as well, and something's happened to them, that one thing or two things that have happened to them to derail them. And I think to myself, I can't go any further than down there, man. I can't. You know what I mean? I look at when people saying to me, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. You're not going to do this. That's not going to happen. And that gives me so much drive and determination to prove you, not to prove you, I've learned so much, man, not only about business, but about myself. Do you know what I mean? About my mindset. And you have to have that growth mindset. You have to have that focus. You have to be driven. You have to be determined. You have to realize that no one is going to, there's going to be people that are going to help you, but there's not going to be people out there that are going to, there might be people there that you're going to have your biggest supporters, but also you're going to have a lot of frenemies as well. People that I feel friends, but they're not your friends, and they'll say things and try and ride off the back of you and stuff as well. So what I try and do is say, listen, it is what it is. But it has been probably the hardest bit, but I always get to that point, Matt, where I think, at the end of the day, it's probably the best journey that I've ever been through, because it's taught me a lot about myself as well.
I love that you can look back and say that. I love that. And do you know what, Wayne? It's turned you into this fountain of knowledge. Yeah. So if it didn't work out, we'll put you in as a speaker alongside ET, Eric Thomas and them guys. Yeah, and we'll get you to motivate, because I'm motivated. I'm pumped. I'm not even going to lie. I'm listening to your story and I'm motivated, mate. I'm pumped. So congratulations for what you achieved and where we're up to. Right, moving things forward. Moving on to your brand, because it's something special you've achieved there. As I talked about earlier on, everybody who becomes a PT or doing your qualifications earlier on, like I did going on 9, 10 years ago now, you all think at some point I'm going to get myself together and I'll start training athletes, footballers, all the rest of it, all these fancy pants. 99.9% of people will never do that. Talk us through Richardson Sport. What is it? Who's it for? What does it stand for?
Oh, well, when we originally first started, Mark, we obviously on the back of everything that has happened and stuff as well, I went for an interview at Portsmouth Football Club, and I remember not getting the position. I got a reference from a coach called Alex Gibson, who was at Man City, and he basically said to me he was working with an England squad or something with a particular coach at this club, and he said, "Look, listen, there's an opportunity here. Go for this job." And I went for this interview, and I remember speaking to this guy, and at the time, Portsmouth were going through their issues and stuff as well. And me and my partner had just met. We had just met, Mike, like 5-6 months in and stuff as well. And she said to me, I've been on this back of this interview, and the interview went okay, but they said to me, look, we want you to work, but we've gone through some financial difficulties at the moment and stuff as well. What's going to happen? Anyway, long story short, what we did was I was coming back on the taxi. I got a taxi from the ground when we had the interview, and I spoke to a taxi driver, and he said to me, where have you just been? And I said to him, I've just been for an interview at the club. He said, listen, and in the space of 10 minutes, Mike, he told me the whole history about the club, right? And said to me, the best thing that you can do, young man, is start your own thing. So I'm thinking in my head, yeah, right, whatever. I just wanted to work at a football club. Then I get on the train, I get back to Euston, get on the train, get back to Euston. I see a player that I know through a family member. He's coming back with his family. He sits next to me. He said, how did everything go and what happened? And I told him. He said to me, the knowledge and everything that you've got, Wayne, you need to be starting your own thing. You need to be giving your skills away too cheaply. You need to be starting your own thing. You know, this is where you need to be now. You need your brand. So I rang my missus on the train, and she said to me, listen, how did your interview go? So I told her, I explained everything to her, Mark. Then she said to me, listen, I've got an idea. Richardson Sport. So I went, what? She said, Richardson Sport. And I said, Wayne, you need to start your own thing. I've made reservations for you to go and see a few people and stuff, because my missus was in the court, she's in the corporate game at the time. Was for you to then go down to Sports City. What we're going to do is we're going to start this brand up, and you've been telling me about it for about the best part of 6 months that you want to make that move. Now I'm making that move for you. And I'm thinking, no, I'm not doing that. You're mad. I said, are you serious? I said, no, I want to work for a club. I want Warm United. I want to do all these kind of things. I want to work, where people see me. I want my name on my jumper. This is where I want to be. She went, listen, what's going to happen is, right, things are going to change dramatically. So what we did was we went down to Sports City and had a meeting with a guy and called Paul Jones. And what he was able to do was he said to me, listen, and my partner, the best part of the month, but she didn't even say anything, Mark. She written out this whole kind of like business plan of like how it looked and everything. And she said, this is what I've done. And every time when you've said something, I've kind of gone through it and investigated through football and all that kind of stuff as well. But not just looking at training footballers. It was the whole thing about with the parents needing support. The issues when players get released from clubs, boys and girls, the expectations of like that one person in the academy of like then getting, the issues around them, with the demands, you know what I mean? And how to become like full-time footballers and stuff as well. And then you had the mental health struggles and, and she said, look, Wayne, this is the whole holistic approach, Richardson Sport, because of your background and because you've been involved with working in schools and colleges and things like that and doing stuff like PRUs, pupil referral units. You've got a great brand here to kind of like look after. It's a massive holistic approach. So
Nice.
The strength conditioning and the training could be one arm. Then you can start employing people to then come in and do lectures and then looking after parents and giving the parents stuff, and giving them education and giving them things. And I think that's not going to happen. Have you thought of all of this? You know what I mean? And I said, it's not. She went, Wayne, you think about the plan. It's not going to be 5 years. You know what I mean? Everyone says, what's your 5-year plan? This is going to be about 13 years. She said it's going to be the thing that's going to go on. So, Mark, what happened was, we ended up doing. It started, like we started working from Sports City. we had about 5 clients. We then started tapping into people like very much like the agents and the coaches. We tried to get in with have a relationship with the teams. The teams were then basically saying to us, no, we can't, they've got everything here, we don't need that, they don't need it. Because at the time, everyone got their training within the clubs. They didn't have anything to do with, there was no mainly social media stuff. That at the point, it was just Facebook at the time. It was, you know what I mean? There was no Instagram or TikTok or, you know, Snapchat or anything like that as well. Facebook was like the main things to get your bits out. And it was like, we ended up then putting bits out of saying to parents, you know, if you've got issue with the, you know, the academy, you want advice, and we're in impartial advice. And we ended up seeing ourselves like very much like this low level kind of like football solicitor, you know, where we're giving information, all that as well. Coaches were coming in and saying, you know, I need help with this, and I'm going for an interview, and you were finding out that you were doing your coaching, then you were doing bits with your parents, then you were then offering advice to players and parents that when they'd been released. Parents were ringing you up, Matt, 2-3 o'clock in the morning, my son or daughter's been released from the club, can you help us? And at one point my partner was like, Wayne, who's on the phone? You know, why are they ringing at this time? Until someone committed suicide, Mark. And then that's when it changed the narrative then, because this thing now is a lot bigger than we think. And I'm thinking myself, I'm in my head thinking, all I ever wanted to do was just look after players, look after footballers, and do the training and train the best people and all that kind of stuff as well. So I had 5 players, Mike. 5 players, brand. A guy was sending me players to come in, he's looking after his main bits, the commodities and everything. And I remember one day, my partner rang me up and she said to me, Wayne, listen, there's a situation, you know, that we need to talk about and stuff as well, and making sure that we've got the right insurances, making sure that we've got everything, you know, because the commodities that you're dealing with, you know what I mean? And she'd seen it from a strategic and, you know, a corporate point of view. What if, you know what I mean? You can't just train. You've got to remember that these guys are potentially worth millions. So we had to right insurance, speak to the right people. I had a sports lawyer, you know, I used to talk with, I used to train him when I was a PT, and I said to him, listen, so what I started to do is network a bit more, start talking to people a bit more, you know, kind of getting people involved. And I think it all then came to a head where my best friend, Richard, who owns a barber's, and what I used to do is, Mark, I used to sit in to kind of get business and everything. I used to sit in the barber's Thursday, Friday, and there was no one in on Saturday. And I used to sit in there and listen to every player that used to go into that barber chair that he used to cut. I've got a problem with my agent. I've got a problem with my coach. They say, you know what I mean? I don't know where my head's at. My missus has just left me. This has happened. Because everyone that sits in that chair, you're thinking to yourself, yeah, you know what I mean? So I used to do, Mark, I used to sit there and take notes. Until one day, my missus rang me and said to me, look, Wayne, with you know, what you do now? And I said, look, I'm on my way home. I've just finished. I've just got these guys and I've just finished. And then my friend Richard rings me and says to me, listen, where are you now? And I said, look, I'm on the M62. He said, you need to turn your car back round. I've got a postcode for you. You need to go to this house now. Just go to this house. So I've gone to this house. So I'm on my way. So it's like, we've got the M62 mark. I had to turn the car around, and now we're going towards Prestbury, Wilmslow. So, you know, it's obviously a footballer. I've turned around, gone there. My first car it had my emblem on the side, which is Sport Fitness for Football. I've gone there, my missus has rang me, are you on your way? I booked the table, all that kind of stuff. I said, yeah, I'm on my way. Like that. So right, so, you know, like trying to get his, you know, like high profile client, I've got to be there. Gone down, Mark, gone there. She said to me, I've gone to the house. It's a media frenzy. There's probably loads of cameras, 2 satellite vans, all that kind of stuff. Everyone's out there, Sky Sports News. She said to me, she rings me in the car phone. She says, Wayne, where are you? So I said, I'm on the way. She said, no, I'm not. You know you're not. I'm watching your car on Sky Sports News. You're going into this guy's house. So I'm like, I'm like, right. She said, what's going on? I said, I'll tell you in a bit. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's happening. So I drove in. And when I got in, Mark, the girl came for me. She said, is your name Wayne? I said, yeah, let me take you up. Took me upstairs. When I got there, Mark, this guy, Mino Raiola, who's the agent. So it was him. And then Mario Balotelli. And there was his guy that looks after him. And he just said to me, look, Wayne, we've got a problem. And it was when he had the fight with Mancini on the training ground.
Mm-hmm.
Watching it was like breaking news, and everyone was watching it. And we knew from that day on that, we've got a problem. So we used to specialise in players that were basically kicked out from the clubs, in dispute, all of that, you know what I mean? Because nobody else would do it. Everyone was complaining. Mm-hmm. So we're having to deal with not just the situation of getting the player fit and making sure that he's ticking over, but all the other little bits that come with it as well. So approach, that's mm-hmm. You've got different strands, and if we don't have it, we then have the consultants and the backing to then do that, which then over periods of time during the networking, we've been able to kind of get people involved.
Massive. So you're covering all bases in essence, and I think most people from the outside looking, and even myself included, over previous years, we've known each other for quite a while. You think it's just the training side. You don't understand the depth that go with it. You don't understand the other side of the business and the other side of what you're providing. How much of a blessing was it that you had your partner there previously to see the corporate side? Because I know, coming from where we come from and being in the leisure industry or being qualified in fitness, PT, strength and conditioning, it doesn't so much equip you for that side of things, does it?
Yeah, was it? Yeah, Emma's been integral. She's been a massive help to me, because there were certain things, Mark, I kind of knew, but I didn't know. I needed help. And one thing that I always say to people, especially when you're in this industry, never be afraid to ask. Never be afraid to ask. Don't feel that you can do this journey alone. You can't do this journey alone. I don't care. With the greatest respect, you can. And when Emma came into it, I remember the first time an agent paid me nearly £400 in my hand. Give it me. He said, I'm just going to give you cash. So I'm thinking, yes, that's a great day's work. I'm off to town. I'm going shopping, I'm going Selfridges. This is mad. I kid you not, this is how I felt. I said, I'm going to town, I'm going shopping. My missus was pregnant with my youngest. And she said, Wayne, that money's not yours. It's the business's. And I went, you just see me do the work. And Mark, I've got this full-blown argument with her on the pitch up, at Sports City. She was saying to me, no, Wayne, how it works is the money goes in there, we pay the business bills, this is what we do, everything's been covered, the insurances and all that kind of stuff as well, you've got to pay everything else of that. And I'm thinking, what do you mean? And we fell out. Totally fell out. And up to that point, I was like, what do you mean? And it was an education for me, Mark. I had to, kind of not speak to her because we were then clashing. I then had to then go and speak to someone totally impartial who was a business mentor. Do you know what I mean? Where I had to sit there and go about how it works, tax, putting money aside for tax, corporate tax, you know what I mean? Everything else.
Yeah.
Be sure that every base was covered. Now, she said, every time she sees me now, she says, Wayne, I think I've trained you well. And I go, we do that? No, we're not doing that. No, we're not. Because this needs to be paid first. This needs to be done. And she's been so much, Mark, a blessing in disguise for me in terms of like what kind of journey she brought me through. And that was an education for me within itself. And speaking to people and going through it. But it was a lot at the time for me to get my head around, because I'm thinking I've always worked and then get paid at the end of the month, and you sort out what you need to sort out and you put money aside. But this now, you've got so much money in your hands from agents and stuff, and then you think to yourself, it's quite easy to then do that and then get off and do that. But then at the end of it, you think, these things need to be paid, these things have got to be sorted out. And and I just couldn't get my head around it, Mark, if I'm being honest. So Emma's been really integral for me and taught me a lot, taught me a lot about myself, but taught me a lot about business.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love the appreciation there. We do need these people. Trust me. Everything I've achieved there's been some people that have played massive parts. They know who they are. So certainly love that appreciation there, Wayne. So we've got this brand now where we're providing the lot. We're covering all angles, the holistic approach. We're supporting away from the sport. We're training athletes with the elite side of the actual S&C and the training and that sort of thing. So we've got everything under this umbrella. What's your vision for the future? Where do you see yourself going from here with it?
Well, I've got a couple of things, Mark, that we'll talk about in months to come and stuff as well, that are beginning to kind of fruition. At the moment, the business I've obviously taken care of itself. I've just taken on 2 interns, both from John Moores University. I've just taken on a university graduate who's doing sports psychology, which I've allowed him to then come in and do stuff as well. So it becomes very much like a different arm. And then my daughter is obviously going to university soon. So what I'm looking for us to do is this side of Richardson Sport is take over this side, in years to come once she then graduates from university, and then because
Nice.
that, from that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Lectures for the WSL Women's Super League. So I cover all 19 clubs as well, doing that about transition, about sport, what happens next. I've been doing some lectures at some universities as well about giving them kind of like the real talk about the real life kind of like SSC, what happens, the journey and everything that goes with it. So spending more time doing lecturing. The business arm of Richardson Sport will take care of itself. And then we've then got a few other good projects as well where I've been going. I've just recently done a talk to BT, to their staff about how to come through the negatives and being resilient and all the other things that come with it as well. So it's where I wanted to be, Mark, and then giving back to colleges and schools. So I go into schools and colleges and talk to them FLC and try and support some of their students and stuff who want to get into kind of the PT stroke fitness game and stuff as well, and the bigger picture and the highlights and the bright lights of obviously working involved in football and stuff as well, but what the other aims and objectives are as well. So lecturing, and spending more time kind of like with the family on different things. So yeah, that's where I want it to be.
Nice. I like that. Some people kind of stutter and stammer a little bit when we look at the future. I'm not too sure.
Yeah.
I love the clarity there. I love the clarity that you've got to go with it. So it sounds like things are going really well, mate. Just talking about the family balance there, and you've obviously got a hell of a lot going on with the brand itself and with Richardson Sport. This is always something that, for me personally, the reason why I asked this question, something I've struggled with finding synergy with across the years. At times, careers flying. I've got self-employed businesses that are going really well. But having those things going and being in shape, training pretty much every day, taking care of the kids, good relationship with the missus, I find it hard to juggle all. If one thing's excelling, it seems something else is falling by the wayside. How do you find that balance?
Like you, Mark, it's taken me a long time to kind of go through it and stuff. I think one of the key things, especially where my partner was, you're here but you're not present. And and when for probably 13 years since we've been together, me and Emma, she has basically sacrificed a lot. And there's been times where right, okay, it's transfer deadline day. There's 10 players coming in, and there's another whatever tomorrow and one thing after another, and we're waiting Sunday, and you're going into work, and you then have to then look at yourself and think, you know what, I have to draw the line at some point, because the last thing that you want to do is, as a family man, or you've got a family, is come home to an empty house. Do you know what I mean?
Yep, certainly do.
And it was probably where I've looked at it, and it's taken me a long time to kind of get around there, man. Because I think, I've got to be there, and I've got to be training, I've got to be in and around it, I've got to be this. Now then, I just sit down and just think, you know what, it'll wait, and if they want you, they'll be there tomorrow. So I value now. At one point, I didn't before. I value now my kind of like my family values now. It's great being a dad, great being around your kids. You know what I mean? You blink, you miss it, because because you're just doing, and yeah, you want to create the foundations. You want to be the best you can be, but then you close your eyes, you open them. One minute your daughter's 3, next minute she's 23. You never played a part, you never done anything. So what your commitment is as well. But Emma, in this case, like now where we spend that quality time and we do stuff and we talk about it. At one point it used to be arguments and disagreements and you never hear, you never this. So now you then have to look at, this is my timetable, this is what I'm doing. At the weekend I'm spending my time, unless I've got to be on the road, or just look at things just a bit differently. Just sometimes just take time out just to kind of think about what the other person is thinking. Don't, you know what I mean? We can be selfish, Mark. We can be very, very selfish. You know what I mean?
Without knowing it as well. Without knowing it a lot of the time, yeah.
And until something happens, until it comes to break point, and snapping at you, and you then have your disagreements and everything, and you turn around and you just go, look, you know what? I really do. I apologise. I'm sorry about this. I'm sorry about what's happened. She said, look, Wayne, I know how committed you are. I know how dedicated you are. I know what you do. But what you've got to remember is we're here as well. And sometimes conversations need to be had. You know what I mean? And I used to think about it's me, and not think about anybody else, and it'll be there when I get home. But that's not always the case.
Well, that's wholesome as hell to hear you talk about the family situ and the kids and putting that first and finding that synergy. It takes a long time to get there, and I think I've got it at times, and then things will spike in other areas of my life, and it needs the energy. And before I know it, I've drifted away again. So it's an ongoing game, but it's good to hear that it's a struggle for high performers other than myself, and it's something that's a work in progress. I'm assuming that the family life and your family away from the business is a massive driver, because I'm a big person on why and what your driver is and what keeps you going. I'm assuming that plays a part in your why.
I think so. I think where my life is, and where my family's concerned. I mean, me and my ex-partner and my daughter, who's obviously 18, we have a very, very good relationship. After like 13, 14 years, you know, at one point it was so negative, and I'm in such a position now where my ex-wife and my fiance talk, you know what I mean, and get on very, very well, you know, because obviously, you know, with my oldest daughter and my youngest daughter as well, where we have a great relationship. I'm able to go around and talk to my my ex-partner about things and chat with her, and she said to me, because she's a coach as well herself, where listen, I've got a problem, or I've got a situation where I need help with something, or I need to talk to you about it. And she said, look, at any point where all at once my youngest wants to come round to the house, you can stay and things like that as well. You know what I mean? And it's you think to yourself, wow, you know what I mean? You think to yourself, wow, that would never have happened, Matt. But you've made that situation, you made it happen because you just go, you know what, this is stupid. We both want the same aims. We've got the same objectives as well, to look after our daughter and be the best parents. Why can't we just be the best parents we can be? Let's support each other, you know what I mean? So we make that plan. When it's a birthday, when it's Christmas, yeah, we go out, we eat. I get my daughter, give her some money to get her a present, kind of thing. You know, same again with my partner. You know, all that kind of stuff. We know what's going on. All right, I'm at my niece's house. I'm at my daughter's house. Okay, then I'll have to call you in a bit. You know what I mean? And we do stuff. And it's a great understanding. To get to that point, Mark, it's been one. You know, it's been so difficult. You know, because you've just been so. You know what I mean? And even where my current partner has told me off about things that I should have done with my ex, because she's looked at it from a woman's point of view, you know what I mean? And gone, that shouldn't happen. You need to sort yourself out. And we all end up being stubborn, Matt. We all end up being stubborn. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. You know, but when I've then sat down with my methodical self and gone, you know what? Yeah, it's difficult. You know what I mean? So I've got to probably be the best person that I can be and try and you know, help where I can. You know, so the support mechanism for me and my family, you know, it's been hard, but you know, I think we're there now.
Yeah, that's meant, and it takes a certain level of humility and maturity to be able to sit down and say that. So it seems like you're in a good place, mate, which is really good to see. Just before we move on to the weekly questions, because success leaves clues, I'm just going to probe your brain a little bit here because of what you've achieved and in such a niche area. Any tips for personal trainers, because it's a heavy industry. There's a hell of a lot of PTs out there, fitness coaches, etc. I've worked in a commercial gym facility now for 7.5 years, and I've seen hundreds of PTs come and go. Anyone who wants to go a little bit more niche than just your general population gym, any tips? If I'm somebody who wants to train athletes, or I want to train specialists in any specific area, how's the go-to? Because you've achieved it.
I think key thing, Mark, is networking. Got to network with people and stuff as well. If you like, obviously we all know about where me works football, but even going back to your own sport, so you might have PTs that might have been swimmers or basketballers or different, they've been involved in different sports. Go back to it, volunteer it, offer your services and stuff as well. And that's probably your first stage of getting involved in it, very much like elite sport. So, so the amateur stuff you can then do, but there's a lot of sports there that don't have much funding, but then where you then can gain your experience and knowledge of that being there and stuff as well. And maybe, it's like very much like on the job training, you might be able to donate or give some time to like one day a week or twice a week, being involved in that sport. Network with people as much as possible. Speak to the coaches, write or send emails or talk to people, talk to them, on a level. You can only say no. And that's one thing I've always had in my mindset, Mike, that I want to get involved in football. And I've had so many doors that have been knocked, that have been shut in my face. And I'd always say that no leads me to my next yes. I've got to get to a situation there where it's got to carry on and something's got to give. You know, they always say, Matt, sometimes you hang around the barber shop so long you'll get a haircut. Do you know what I mean? And at some point you'll catch a break. So how are you going to get there? What's your what kind of what's going to be your motive of obviously getting there? So you want to get involved in the sport and stuff as well. So you look at the teams that are around you, or you may want to go back to a university and then donate some of your time or whatever. Or look at your sport, look at your different sports that you're involved in. If you're involved in a sport, so quickly there was a guy I went into working with England lacrosse. So not a lot of people know this, but I was one of the first guys to be involved in an England lacrosse setup. And I volunteered for 6 years because they were based at Platt Lane for a guy who I'm seeing at some point over the weekend. And they were involved training at City's training ground. And I used to do stuff with them. And I thought, it's a different sport. Let me see what I can get involved in. And I volunteered for 6 years because it was something different. And I always remember a guy coming in to see me and watching me training. And one of the coaches brought this guy in from a university. And he said to me, I like your training, like what you do. And I didn't know who this guy was until the Tuesday when we were training at Longford Park. And he turned around to me, this guy, and he brought 4 guys. And he said to me, your time is done here now, Wayne. We're taking over now. Did anyone tell you? And I just went, Mark. So you come. I went, okay. And I ended up, after 6 years, leaving something and just walking out. And I had loads of people ringing me and calling me and stuff as well. And that was probably one of the best experiences that I had, because a lot of people said I would have done this and done that. And I said, no. I walked out because I volunteered for 6 years. It wasn't like I had a job and I had rights or one thing after another. I said, there, Mike, what should have happened is the hierarchy is the management should have told me, not the coach, not the fitness coach. What's happening in. And then there was a golfer that I was working with for the best part of 2 years. And he was from the Sale Racecourse estate. So from an inner city estate, playing up to the PGA. So he played the PGA at like 19, 20. And I remember him going for a trial at England in Lincoln. And when he got there, they said to him about S&C. Well, there was probably about 8 or 7 players there. They said, how many people know about S&C? So everyone, the parents looked at each other, and then this guy went like this with his hand because I wasn't there. He said, what do you do? He said, I do this, I do trap bar deadlift, I do squats, I do trap work, I do swimming, I do yoga. And now the parents were looking at each other and going, this is brilliant. He said, who do you do it with? He said, a guy called Wayne from Richardson Sport. And that Mark was the same guy that basically came in the lacrosse setup to tell me that, that the job was done. He then ran after the parents and then sent them an email and said, we need to find out if Wayne's accredited. We need to find out if this has happened.
Okay.
We need to do this. And he sent me an email and said, how's the accreditation going? And how's this going? And how's that going? And then Mark, I didn't answer him. Because what I always say to people is, if you know you're confident in your ability, never get to a situation where you then create doubts in your head. You can always question yourself on certain things, but don't get to a situation where you start doubting yourself. You're there for a reason. You've earned the right. So you don't have to justify yourself to anybody. If that's the case, then we all sit down like adults and we'll talk about it. But 9 times out of 10, it's people trying to stand on you to get where they need to get. And they don't know your journey. They don't know what's gone on. You don't know what to get there or whatever the case may be. And that's why I was seeing, Mark, this social media thing now, what we see now on social media is like, people are not like, don't want to do the work. All they want to do is see you. They see you training someone. Then they turn around and start covertly sending your clients messages and saying, do you want to train with me? I only charge this. Do you want to train with me? I only charge that. And I always say to people, one thing that you cannot do is buy clients.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going to separate us as a business away from everybody else? What experience are you going to get when you walk through the door? What kind of support are you going to get? Are you just going to go out and it's because there's a rented pitch there and there's a few things there and you're getting into it, or what's your experience going to be of that? Of taking that person through a journey. You don't know what that person's gone through or what you're going to do. What support are you going to put in place? And that's why we do what we do, Mark.
Love it, mate. Love it. Love it. And there's an element of confidence and reassurance in oneself that comes through, obviously, everything you've been through and everything we've discussed so far. But you're in a fantastic place. And I know that anyone coming up who's listening to this can take a hell of a lot away, hell of a lot of confidence that if you're channeling your energies in the right direction and you're inputting into yourself, then that self-belief can come, that you're gonna achieve things in the long term.
Yeah.
No, fantastic. Fantastic. And just to wrap up on this now, Wayne, before we move into these weekly questions,
Yeah.
are you happy?
I wasn't before, Mark, but I am now. I'm probably sometimes I spend most of my time and driving down the M62 sometimes, and I cry my eyes out. Not crying my eyes out because I'm upset, because sometimes I just cannot believe where I'm at. Do you know what I mean? I just cannot. I sometimes cannot believe. Sometimes people ring. Last night I had a phone call from the trainer from Lawrence Ecole, who's fighting in the weekend. Can you help us out with a place to train? And you're then getting calls, from agents that are bringing players over and stuff as well. Can you set up and you think to yourself, every day is a different day, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
Completely different day. You know what I mean? It brings, you think, oh, you know what? I can't. And then you get a phone call. We've been given your number by such and such a person. We've been given your number. I've had an agency come in with like 10 agents, and we hear you're the go-to man, Wayne. Can we sit down and talk to you about this? We do this. And I'm thinking to myself, man, when you sit down, you think you're in a boardroom in like the Taekwondo center. You're in a boardroom and you sit down and you go, these guys have come to see me. I don't have to really do much talking here. I don't have to start justifying myself and say, no, this is what I've done. This is my qualifications. This is what I'm like. No, how can I help? And I'm like thinking to myself, my gosh, I'm just watching that guy on transfer deadline day. I was just watching this guy. I'm thinking to myself, this is mental. He said to me, oh, I've just seen a guy from such and such with this player, and you were working with him, and you were like, yeah, and that's what, you know what I mean, Matt? Sometimes I cannot believe it. Up to this point, I just cannot believe, where I'm at the moment.
And mate, credit to you. I absolutely love it. I'm buzzing. Look out, the grin speaks for itself, but that is testament to what you've put in, to all those years of hard work and hardship and long days and long nights and tears and all the struggles that you've just discussed. It's got you to this stage. So for anyone listening in, this is what you could achieve if you work hard enough. Do you know what I mean? This is exactly why I wanted to get you on to share these stories, mate. Wholesome myself. Love it.
It's like I said, with everything, you know what I mean? I've always wanted to get to a point, Mark, where I wanted to have a centre where players could come and experience different things, and whatever issues it was, you know what I mean. We've seen parents crying, and people coming in, and players and issues, you know what I mean, whether that's been bullying or whatever. And you think yourself, you're playing referee, and then you're having to bring people in. And I sit down sometimes and think to myself, I just cannot believe it, you know what I mean? Because I've always wanted that mindset of having that place where people could come and do that. But for me, it's giving something back. And I said, when I get to because the position I'm in now, I said, once I got into a position like this, I wanted to always give something back. And the issue that you have now with like I said before, which I alluded to before about social media, I had a player who's been injured, and we've been training at another centre where we've been able to access some of their facilities and stuff as well, and speak to their expertise. So I say sometimes, if you just bear in mind that you're not going to know everything. You're not going to know everything. Don't try, you know what I mean? You're an expert in what you do, but think about every day you're still learning. You're going to find out some people, even parents, when they come in, that they're going to know more than you. Don't insult anyone's intelligence. Always open mind, you know what I mean? And always be willing to listen. You know what I mean? Best thing for young people and practitioners and PTs that are coming through, be in that mindset where you listen to the situation, find out a bit more about them, have a bit of empathy, talk to them. Do you know what I mean? Talk to them on a level where you can sit down and talk to them on a level and find out a bit more about it, because that's the whole point about personal training. It's not about you, just like, okay, it's about you. It's about the person. That's why they've employed you to do a job. Do you know what I mean? And if anything happens, you can always go back.
Yeah.
So for me, it's making it personal.
Right. Next question, Wayne. what percentage of the time would you say you are on it and contributing towards future goals, whether personal or professional?
Mark, to be honest, I'm probably on it all the time. 7 days, honestly, 7 days a week. Even we were just sorting out our holiday. My missus. What we try and do is, I try and do it towards when the transfer window is finished and the pre-season is done. But I'm forever at the moment. I'd never get to that point where I find it very, very difficult to switch off. Probably like weekends where I get a bit of time to then do that. But sometimes I even have to leave my phone in my car or leave it at home or something, because then there's always someone trying to contact me and stuff. And I always think, at one point I used to think that there, it's an opportunity missed. I always think about opportunities being missed, or where I could have put myself, or these phone calls. And at one point I used to find it very, very difficult just to switch off. Now I kind of like, I've spoken to somebody to kind of like, right, you need to have that time just to kind of downtime, you time, just relax. And then at the same time, like now, when you go back, Monday to Friday, you focus, you're driven, But think about the time what you need as well, just to kind of, like we mentioned before, we alluded to before about the family and everything else that goes with it. Probably 5 days a week, yes, And then at the weekend, I tend to just switch off and focus on my family and stuff as well. Not like I don't.
So we've got that balance, yeah. I'm with you. So when we're on it, we're full time on it by the sounds of things. But when we switch off,
yeah, definitely. And that's what I found. That's what I found really hard. If I don't do it, Mark, somebody else will. That was always my mentality. Mm-hmm. You'll miss out on the opportunity. There's always an opportunity there. What can we give? What can we do? How can we support? And you can end up being that. You have to be careful, because one thing that you don't want to do is then go out there and think, people feel, all right, well, that person there is just on me because we're paying him X amount of money, or we're paying him this. And one thing after another is like, no, what I'll do is I'll drop you an email. How you doing? I'm out at the moment. I'm a bit busy. I'm with my family. Drop me your details, and then what I'll do is I'll respond back to you in the next couple of days or whatever it is. So that is a skill within itself. Do you know what I mean? And if you're good at what you do, and you kind of, they've come to you, they'll come to you again, or, you don't have to really worry about that. But back then I was proper just tunnel vision, killed or be killed type of attitude. No one's going to do it. I've got to do it, and I've got to be on it. But now it's, they always say sometimes, Mark, I never now have to worry about customers now, because you know what? When people start coming to you, then you must be doing something right. Do you know what I mean?
Nice.
What I mean?
You've earned that. It's well earned. When after all this time, it's been well earned.
Then you don't have to. So, it's been hard, but yeah, definitely sometimes it's hard to switch off. But yeah, I've kind of managed and kind of gone through it. So yeah, it's good.
Nice one, Wayne. And then the last one: choose 3 people, dead or alive, past or present, to sit down for dinner with in an aid to make the rest of your life as successful as possible.
That's a good one. So Emma Hughes, my partner, because because she's made me who I am. Do you know what I mean? So without her, I wouldn't be where I am. You know what I mean? This brand, the whole logo. You know what I mean? And what it stands for. So I don't know if you can see, Mark, that.
Yeah.
So this here it's the athlete finishing the finishing line. So there's a finishing line at the end of it. You know what I mean? No matter what you go through in life, there'll be a finishing line. And she sat down with the designer. All this, Mark, was all done. I was not present at any of these meetings at all. This was all done by her. I mean, so that's the first thing. You know what I mean? She's been so integral in terms of what she's done and sacrificed her own career. 13, 14 years, and done part-time work and worked in the business and done stuff. So yeah, without her, I wouldn't be who I am. My stepdad and mentor, a guy called Roger Smith, who is a Christian, but at the time when I was really struggling, I used to go to Moss Side and swim and run from there and stuff as well. And this guy, he looks a bit like Father Christmas, used to speak to me all the time. I thought, what's this guy want? And why are you speaking to me? And why are you chatting to me and all that kind of stuff as well? And for the best part of like nearly 33 years of my life, he's been a mentor. He's picked me up at times when I've needed him. You know, he's been that support mechanism where he's sat down and gone through it all and been that methodical voice and said to me, this is what you need to be doing, and questioned everything. If you're going to do it, Wayne, you know what I mean? Whether that I'm moving into a new home or, you know, finances and being there as a dad, you know, as a father figure to me, you know what I mean? And he was like kind of like that first, my male imposing, you know, male guy in my life that, you know, I needed, that was trying to guide me on that right path, you know what I mean? That, you know, that of just staying positive and the knockbacks and being a Christian and having that Christian and having your faith, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? It was difficult, but that kind of thing, you know. And probably my friend, the third one is probably my friend Richard Kalam, and you know, a guy that, you know, I've always tried to walk down the same path as him, you know, and how he's kind of helped me out, and you know, his barbershop, and I learned so much. You know, there's people like Aaron Burns that will tell you, there's Joe Thompson, guys, you know, really good guys there that, you know, that have been through a lot in their lives and stuff as well, that are there, that have been able to gain knowledge and experience and things like that as well. And that place, that barbershop, has not just been a barbershop to me, it's been a support mechanism. It's been a guy that has helped me and guided me and helped me and spoke to me on numerous occasions when I've done something right or done something wrong. He even told me about my family. He said everyone wants to be, you know, everyone wants a family, but no one wants to spend that time going through it all, you know what I mean? And gave me a few home truths, you know what I mean? And sometimes you always say, Matt, your true friends you can count on one hand. Do you know what I mean? That, you know,
Yeah.
those guys there, you know, I think there's many people that have contributed towards, but those three people for me, as well as my family, but those three people for me, Mike, have been so much of a shining light in my life, you know, and being able to kind of make this journey as smooth as possible, you know. So I'm eternally grateful for what they've done for me.
Amazing. It sounds like they've had a massive impact on you. So shout out to those guys. Thank you very much for getting to where you are today.
No, thank you.
And Wayne, that's about us, mate. That's about us. That is absolutely top draw. I knew it'd be an interesting conversation. I knew there'd be loads of takeaways. Thank you for sharing and the honesty. It's been absolutely top draw, and anyone who listens to it can take a hell of a lot away from this. Just before we wrap it up, Wayne, do you want to just let listeners know where they can find you? So social handles, website, etc.
Usual Instagram, you know, at Richardson Sport, Twitter as well. We've got a website. The website's going through a massive change at the moment because of what's happening in the next couple of months, you know, which will be all revealed, and I'll talk to you about that, Mark, at some point as well. You know, my daughter's got me on TikTok, she's got me on Snapchat, she's got me on all the kind of social media outlets, as well as an 18-year-old does and all that. But we've got a great support mechanism there. And if you ever want to get in contact with us, you know, and speak to us, you know, whether you're going through training, you're going through a process, or just starting out in terms of your journey, you know, it's just Wayne at richardsonsport.co.uk. You know, I'm willing to ask any questions or anything, you know, if I get back to you, you know, and we'll, you know, I'll give you as much advice as I can, you know, and support if I can, you know, because someone helped me and I was you at one point, you know, so if I can give something back, Mark, you know, by all means, you know, look at us on our social media handles.
Appreciate that. Make sure if you're listening to this, make sure you take him up on that offer. There's a fountain of knowledge in there, so make sure you get in touch and utilize what's available. Wayne, thank you so much.
No,
It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you.